So Nisha, I'm still feeling a little bit rough. So thank you for picking this article about Robocop to talk about.
I know how much you love Robocop.
So, within the context of the universe he exists in, Robocop is an unkillable, cybernetically enhanced badass with an unflinching devotion to the law and a penchant for uppercutting people through plate glass windows. Something he is apparently only able to do thanks to his best and yet least known ability, his super Catholicism.
Okay, so there might be some people who don't know about Robocop.
I know, and I don't know why they're fans of his channel, because we talk about it all the time, but I guess we should clarify what Robocop is, because the name is a little bit of a misnomer, because he's not a robot, although he is a cop.
Yeah.
So it's a bit confusing. He's actually, I think, more akin to a cyborg, and a recurring, ever-present theme throughout a lot of Robocop-related media is, like, what is Robocop? Is he a man? Is he a machine? Is he something in between? And that's something that the man inside the machine, Alex Murphy, who was a police officer who just gets so wrecked by just multiple shotguns.
Yeah, that scene where he's just stood and he's just taking all these bullets.
Oh God, it's
he's like for a minute, just stood there for a minute.
It's so harsh. That scene is unbelievable. He gets shot about 10,000 times.
I hated it when they shot his hand off. I know it's not real,
they need to, yeah.
But I was just like, ugh.
Doesn't it feel real because of the practical effects? Because that'd be CGI these days. Yeah, Alex Murphy, for lack of a more nuanced term, gets all kinds of fucked up. And Nisha, I take it that you recently watched Robocop?
I watched it a few weeks ago.
And did the version you watch include the scene where Robocop gets shot through the head?
Yeah.
And did you get to see the back of his head blown out?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's cut out of the theatrical cut. And I think that ruins the movie. Because, like, in the theatrical cut, you don't get to see that. So all you see is, like, Alex Murphy gets shot a few times, and it's somewhat believable that maybe you could bring him back to life with cybernetics, but when you get to see the shot of the entire back of his head getting blown out, the question of is Robocop even a human anymore starts to make more sense because there's so little left of him. And there's a line in the movie where they're arguing about, does Robocop have any rights? Where they just say, if we laid out all the pieces of you on a table, there wouldn't even be enough for a corpse. And that's so fucking harsh. And it's like, oh God, and you can see why Robocop struggles with mortality. And as much as I hate the 2014 reboot, there is one really good part of that movie, and it is where Alex Murphy's in the Robocop suit and he asks them, what do I actually look like? What's even left? And they separate away all the robot parts, and there's literally a set of lungs, his head, and then the most annoying part, one hand. Just one hand. Oh, I hate that bit. But ignoring that bit with the one hand, you just see, and then he just immediately just breaks down because he can't physically comprehend what has happened to him. Yeah. And I think he actually starts crying. And this is a neat little feature out of one eye because the other side of his face got blown off for the explosion. So you can only cry once. Even his fucking tear ducts aren't real. And he says to Gary Oldman, never show me like this again. I never want to see myself in this situation.
Yeah, that's awful.
And you never had anything similar in the original Robocop. I don't think you needed to, because they have that really just harsh bit where Bob Morton's talking to someone who goes, oh, well, we think we can save his left arm. And Bob Morton, what the fuck are you talking about? The left? Why would you want a stupid human appendage when we can give him a bulletproof robot one? I want full body prosthesis.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, why keep the hand? What's so special about that one hand?
There's a deleted scene that explains that, which is still stupid, and it's Michael Keaton says to Gary Oldman, keep the hand, because I want Robocop to be able to shake people's hands. It's that simple. I want, like, when people meet Robocop, they shake a human hand and you can feel there is a human there, which is still stupid, but at least they explain it a little bit. And obviously the symbolism behind it is that, oh, it's a human hand pulling the trigger. Because the 2014 Robocop movie is supposed to be an allegory for drone warfare. It's like, okay, how much humanity is behind these robots pulling the trigger? It's like, yeah, we get it. We fucking get it. It's still stupid. God damn it, I hate that reboot. But that moment is really cool.
See, I've not seen the new one.
Well, that's the only good scene in the entire movie. And it's a shame that the guy they get in just can't act, so... do you know what? Peter Weller could have done that. Peter Weller's a fucking good actor. I don't think it's like Joel Kinnaman or something. I don't think he could... Especially as well when it's really bad CGI and you see the hand just floating there.
Okay, so we were established in the reboot of Robocop, there's not much left of Alex Murphy.
Yeah, pretty much like his head and his lungs, and then the hand.
Yeah,
for
there is reasoning behind that, but
I fucking hate it, so dumb.
So what about the original Robocop? Is there much left of him?
There's even less than that's left in the 2014 reboot because they take out everything that isn't useful.
Yeah.
I think he has a heart, he has a rudimentary digestive system, which they acknowledge, and they say he has to eat this paste. This basically sustains the few organic parts left. His face isn't real. You think the fake? No. Yeah, because in Robocop 2, he says that they made it to honour Alex Murphy.
Okay.
So the face wasn't real. They just like took it and tried to repair it as best they can.
Yeah.
And you can even see the bullet hole from when he gets the back of his head blown out, being like, just smoothed over with like rubber and cement. It's like, so even his face isn't real. His eyes aren't real.
Yeah.
His teeth aren't real. And so, Joe, the thing people always say, why don't they shoot Robocop in the face? It wouldn't work because he doesn't even have a human skull anymore. He has a completely robotic skull, which his face is then stretched over, and everything underneath it isn't real.
I say he's definitely got some brain left because he has dreams, doesn't he?
That line of, if we laid the pieces of you that are left out on a table, there wouldn't be a cop, is not hyperbole. There is almost nothing left of Alex Murphy, which is why the question of, am I even still a human, is such an interesting philosophical quandary to me. And I love that it exists in a film called Robocop. It's so good. This film has so much depth and I love it.
Well, it turns out in the end that he is actually human, or he considers himself to be.
Yes, because the very last line of the original Robocop is, hey, nice shooting, son. What's your name? Call me Murphy. So, yeah, so finally Robocop has come to terms with his own, Robo Mortality, and has said, I am still Alex Murphy, if not in body, still in spirit and mind. And I love that. And then they ruin it in one of the sequels. When I think at the end of Robocop 3, which is terrible and no one ever talks about, he tells someone to call him Robocop. And this is one of the reasons that I adore Robocop, because in universe, nobody is ever able to figure out why Alex Murphy is just so able to come to terms with the fact he is now a robot. Because every other person they try to do it to immediately tries to commit suicide in what I think is the best part of Robocop 2. Have you seen Robocop 2?
No.
Okay, well you will if you edit this video, so you'll get to see that clip. But they literally make a Robocop 2. And they say, now introducing Robocop 2, and it comes out like a big pots and pans robot, and it tears off its mask, revealing a skull, and then shoots itself in the face. It is an amazing montage, because my favourite little detail as well is that it goes crazy and shoots the people around it, and then the next thing you have a scientist and he's just wearing a fucking cast, introducing the next one. It's like, okay, so good.
All right, so do we know why that doesn't happen to Alex Murphy?
Well, it's explored in some detail in extended universe material and alluded to in, I think, Robocop 2. And it's simply because Alex Murphy is a Catholic. And people might think, well, I don't remember Alex Murphy's Catholicism being all that big a deal, but it's actually a super huge fucking deal. Yeah. And again, extended universe material reveals that one of the reasons he was handpicked for the Robocop program. You might think, well, no, it's random. Alex Murphy just gets shot. It's a horrific accident, and obviously the Robocop program takes advantage of that. But it's not, because do you remember the start of the movie, Nisha? It's Alex Murphy, he comes in from a safer precinct because he gets relocated.
Oh, yeah.
And who relocates him? OCP, because OCP run the police. Yeah. And that's one of those little subtle things that no one ever picks up on until you point it out, and it is.
Like me.
Yeah. But think about that for a moment. It's like, OCP say we need to find a guy who's matches the profile that we've got. Show me the files. Next scene, Alex Murphy, I've been transferred here to the most dangerous precinct in Detroit, and he gets shot to death 5 minutes later. And then they pick him up. And they talk about, again, in extended universe stuff that, his psychological profile was perfect for the Robocop program because, one, he is fiercely devoted to duty and has an unflinching sense of justice. And two, he's really, really Catholic. And one of the key tenets of Catholicism is that the most heinous mortal sin one can commit is suicide. And when Alex Murphy wakes up as Robocop, that deep-rooted instinct to preserve his own life at all costs stops him from doing what all the other Robocops did and taking his life. And then he helps him come to terms with being a robot. And again, this is a movie called Robot. It's so good. It's one interesting philosophical thing to explore.
Okay, so the reason he doesn't commit suicide is because he is Catholic.
Yes, and that allows Robocop to avoid that thing that happens to the Robocop 2 and 3, which is they just can't they'd rather die than live inside the robot body, whereas Alex Murphy's like, well, no, because killing myself is the worst thing I could possibly do. And that allows him to just get over that immediate hump of, holy shit, I'm trapped in this robot body. Yeah. And another little detail I like so much is that one of the reasons they decide to give Robocop a face is so that when he looks into a mirror, he doesn't see a faceless machine looking back at him. Yeah, he sees his own face, which allows him to hold on to just one last little bit of his humanity, which again stops him from going insane and trying to blow himself up. And they don't talk about that in the movies, but they do in the books and the comics, and it's like, oh, it's so interesting. It's basically a Black Mirror episode. Some of the questions asked in Robocop wouldn't be out of place in a Black Mirror episode, and I fucking love it. So have you seen much Black Mirror?
Yeah, I watched some last year. The one that I remember the most is the one that has Miley Cyrus in it, though.
Oh, that was really cool. Like the idea of, oh, we're going to trap her, like a psyche inside a robot, and it's basically we're going to torture a virtual version of her forever, and it's such a weird, uncomfortable question to ask, and I love that someone made a show about it.
Yeah, I like interesting stuff like that.
I adore it, and it's why like, people think it's a film about a robot cop who shoots people. I know it is, but the fact you can even have these conversations about it is why I think it holds up today.
It's like, I like what's that film with Robin Williams in? Oh, Bicentennial Man.
Bicentennial Man, yeah. It's a similar concept of, like, at what point does this robot become a man?
Yeah.
And they even have that bit where he's at the world court or something like that, saying, well, the world will not accept an immortal man.
Yeah.
So we have to, like, you know, he willingly allows, like, you know, some, is it like inorganic blood to be added to his robot system so he will age naturally?
I think so, yeah.
It's like, oh,
Because
man.
there's that scene at the end, spoilers, where he's really, really old. And I think just before he dies, the nurse comes in and says, oh, yeah, he's considered human or something like that. And he dies, like, happy. Because
he's finally been awarded his humanity. And I love shows or movies that ask questions like that because they make you think more than not at all. And bring it back to Black Mirror, the one that always just gives me the biggest sense of existential dread is the Christmas episode. You remember that one, White Christmas?
You probably jogged my memory.
Okay, it's the one where John Hamm, and I forget the name of the other actor, but they're in the cabin. And it turns out that, oh no, it's not him and John Hamm in a cabin. It's like, you know, they're inside, like, I think they call it an egg. Because there's 3 stories, it's an anthology of 3 stories. Yeah. And he says, oh, what we do is we download a copy of someone's personality and put it in here. And then you can talk to it, or you can, like, fast forward time.
Yeah.
And they'll experience more time. So he goes in for 5 minutes, but he spends like a year with him. And there's a throwaway line in that show that terrifies the fuck out of me, where like John Hamm gets asked, well, what about if it goes wrong? Because he talks about how he, we'll get someone's psyche into one of these little, like, you know, cookies here. That's cookies, that's it. We'll download the personality into it, and then we'll fast forward time for about 6 months. So they go crazy, but not crazy enough. So they'll, like, you know, be completely useless, and they'll be so starved for any sort of just like interaction that they will then basically become the slaves of the personality they're copied from, and they'll run your house or cut your toast and things like that. And he traps this lady and she says, but I don't want to be a slave. He goes, well, fuck you then. He takes away everything, so she's just sat there experiencing time passing with no way to avoid it for 6 months. And she gets so crazy, I'll do anything you want. Please just don't send me back into the void of blackness where, like, oh, please just don't send me back into the endless void of nothingness where I can just experience the passage of time and feel my sanity slowly slipping away. And then she just becomes like a mindless drone who just, like, you know, cooks the toast for the lady. But that's not the bit that scares me. It's where the guy asks him, well, what do you do if the person does go crazy? He says, oh, we just sold them off cheap to some video game, some war thing, I think. Which means that in that universe, there is just like a war game where you are shooting the tortured psyches of failed experiments who are trying to become like virtual slaves for the people who they're copied from. It's like, oh my god, this is so terrifying.
It's depressing.
It's like when you're watching Robocop and you're thinking like, oh, it's a cool little show about a robot cop, and then it's just like, no, it's like Alex Murphy's continually struggling with just his own humanity, and he's confronted by the fact that he is no longer just a human, he's something in between. It's like, oh god, no, Robocop. I think way too much about stuff, and it's probably a huge issue that I'll have to deal with at some point. Well, gets me, I don't like it. And then there's a bit at the end of that episode that really freaks me out, where they get that guy to confess to a crime, and spoilers, it turns out he accidentally killed somebody, which resulted in the accidental death of his own daughter. And they ask at the end of the episode, what does you want to do with this? And they point to it, and it's like, this is essentially a human consciousness that is trapped in just this cabin, confronted by the image of their own dead daughter. And what the guy does, he fast forwards the time, so he's experiencing 1,000 years for every human second. And he says, oh, leave it and we'll turn it off after over Christmas. And someone worked out that he probably spent like 13 trillion years trapped in this one thing. Like, basically, and it's, Black Mirror.
Horrifying.
It's terrifying.
Just the thought of just being stuck somewhere for so many years, not being able to do anything, and just psychologically,
you can't comprehend it. And that's why I love shows like that. And Robocop.